Let's do it. It is the NBA Strategy Show. Welcome, Dave Loughran, Adam Scher. Well, if you're wondering, Josh Engelman is still out sick. That's right, filling in for him today. He's got the flu. You know how much that would suck to have the flu over Christmas, Adam?
Yeah, I do because when I was a kid, it's not really the case anymore, but there was a long stretch where it was like I never get sick except for like Christmas Eve through New Year's every year.
Brutal. Yeah, so he said he's feeling better. He'll be back soon. Maybe he'll even be back tomorrow. We'll see. But anyway, hope you guys had a great Christmas. I did. Do you have any crazy family members?
No, mine ends up being really small because most of my family, I have a small family anyway, but then like half my family lives out of state, so I don't get the crazy family stories.
Okay. I get some of them, some that I can't really talk about right now. But yeah, and this guy says Josh buying hair products with 10K win. No, that's not I'm not Josh. But yeah, anyway. DFS Beer Pack, Dave, how about them Sixers? Bro, that was an awesome game yesterday. And Embiid, arguably the best game all around that he's ever played. So pretty fun to watch. Hope you guys did well playing that 5-game set. And we got a 6-gamer today. We're going to get into all of that right now. And then afterwards, you've got the NFL Strategy Show coming up. I'm taking off that one since I'm filling in for Josh, but definitely hang out for Week 17, the last Thursday Strategy Show we'll have of the year. Ben Rasa and Sal Vetri are going to break all of it down. Monster slate, 16-game slate. Every team's playing. So you'll want to digest as much content as possible. But first, the sponsor of the NBA Strategy Show, you know who it is, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, home of the $150,000 baller. And, of course, the only place where you can get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points, those YSRPs, by simply signing up through us at awesomeo.com. Got the 30K NBA baller today. And sometimes if you get in early enough, there's management-free contests where everything paid in by the player gets paid back out to the player. There was a 50K overlay contest yesterday on Christmas. And if you're not there, it's very easy to sign up. And I'll tell you how to do it right now. Just go to awesomeo.com, AWESEMO, and click on the NBA tab, articles. You'll see the Cash Building Blocks article. It's free. It's written by EMAC. Give it a look. Read it. Scroll to the bottom. You'll see the Yahoo link right there. Just click that Yahoo link. Very simple. Cash Building Blocks article, free. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports link. Click that, and when you sign up, use the sign-up code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. Upon depositing, get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points. The competition's not as stiff at Yahoo either. Like, it's a great place to play. We got guys sending screenshots from Yahoo all the time. Like, you know, you're not going to have the $100,000 win. But, Adam, you see, we get these two guys that it feels like every other day, 500, 700, 800, 400, every day.
Yeah, Yahoo's where you should be playing if you're trying to, like, profit at DFS, but in a way where you get more steady income. Like if you can profit, on DraftKings or FanDuel, but it's more of like a year long.
Yeah, the swings can be wild.
Right. Like I won 2 slates and that carried me for the year, and several months, you lose money. Whereas Yahoo, it's because the tournaments are smaller, the fields aren't quite as sharp. You're able to, more consistently just kind of pull money out.
So Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, sign up through the articles, the NBA article, Cash Building Blocks, Yahoo link. Awesomeo is the sign-up code, and get your $30 in YSRPs when you sign up. They're as good as cash, used on the site to play and win real money. So there's no reason not to do that if you haven't done so yet. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports is the sponsor of the NBA Strategy Show. So, all right, actually, yeah, we just had the link. I believe it would be Brett tossed the link into chat. So there you have it. He says, become a baller. Get your YSRPs here. That's right, Brett. All right, well, we're glad to have all of you guys with us, as always. Back from the holiday, a lot to talk about. And, Adam, this means we got to kick it off with Washington and Detroit. Simple phrase, shit show. I'm assuming Luka plays. We'll get to that in a little bit. Full practice, I don't know. Karl Anthony Towns is questionable. There are some other pieces of news that are significant for sure. But this game in general has so much right now that'll leave you scratching your head. I want to turn it over to you, but first, Luke Kennard Out. Bruce Brown, questionable. Blake Griffin and Christian Wood should be playing, but Isaiah Thomas on the other side is still suspended. Rui Hachimura is out. Mo Wagner's out. Bertans out. Thomas Bryant's still out. And then Jordan McRae's questionable. So that might not sound like much, but if Jordan McRae plays, it's not crazy to think that, what do you have, like a pinky finger or a finger injury or
Yeah, he had surgery to have screws removed from his pinky.
right. So if he were to return, it's not unrealistic to think, oh, maybe he plays 28 minutes and Robinson or whoever doesn't get that run. But to further complicate things, you look at the game flow from last time out. Garrison Matthews played 20. Gary Payton had 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals in the second quarter. He played
Gary Payton looked like the best player on the floor in that game.
Oh,
It was
no
insane.
question. No question. But he played 34 minutes. Does that mean that he does it again, or was he just running hot? Justin Robinson played 16. Pisechnik's played 20. Troy Brown played 32. Mahinmi played 28. Ish Smith only played 25 because the bench did a decent job of bringing them back. Bonga played 11. Admiral Schofield played 18. Bradley Beal played 37. So if you get where I'm going with this, it was uncharacteristic of Scott Brooks the way so many players got involved and so many of the starters didn't see their regular minutes.
Yeah, it was. I had mentioned, when we talked about the slate, that even though Washington was really shorthanded, they weren't short on bodies; they were short on talent. And you kind of saw the risk that comes in those situations where coaches will tend to play the hot hand. Gary Payton played great. He closed the first half over Bonga. He played most of the second half over Ish Smith. And so that's a risk that you take. I'm not going to assume he plays 34 minutes again, but I do assume he's still in the rotation. I think he still gets enough minutes to matter and potentially take minutes from someone else. I think that it makes it so you don't want to project Admiral Schofield for like 35 minutes or something like that. If McRae is back, he's really interesting because the Wizards need scoring, and that's what he does. I assume he's in shape. I assume he's been, exercising or whatever, trying to stay in shape since it was a finger injury. So if he's back, he's an interesting play. I think that the rotation here is going to be risky. You're still going to want to look to guys like Ish, particularly Ish, but the minutes are obviously risky, like we saw last game. Beal's minutes are solid. The one thing that makes me feel a little bit better is that it really doesn't matter if Admiral Schofield loses minutes because he doesn't produce anyway, so who cares?
It's terrible, yeah.
Right, and the same goes for Isak Bonga. Like whether Isak Bonga plays 24 minutes or 12 minutes, it really doesn't matter to my DFS team. So that's the one positive here is that the guys that you're interested in for DFS, Ish, Beal, Brown, Mahinmi, God, I cannot say his name.
Pisechniks.
Yeah. I was watching the Wizards game, and I was watching it with my mom, and every time they said his name, I would repeat it to myself 5 times. What are you doing? And I was like, I can never remember how to say this guy's name. Sat down to do the show, was still can't remember how to say his name. Looked it up on Basketball Reference, was like, all right, I got it. Went to say it, was like, don't know how to say his name.
Dude, it's so easy for that. I sat there the other day when I was prepping, and I stared at it for 3 minutes just trying to get it down. It's very easy to forget. There was another name. Antetokounmpo was never that tough because we talked about him so frequently. And believe it or not, he's been in the league for a pretty long time now. But when you get guys like this that at least I've never heard of, that's when it's pretty easy to throw you off. But it's a solid breakdown there. The thing is, another thing too, though, is look at some of the salaries. If you're just talking about DraftKings, right? Brown is above 6K now. Ish Smith is above 6K. Bradley Beal's 100 under 10,000. The price tags are all increasing on these guys, which just makes it that much more difficult.
Yeah, I think that the best salary might be on AP. Or Mahinmi. They're both cheap, and they're going to play 48 minutes barring foul trouble, especially in the spot.
Did you just call him AP?
Yeah. Which is also what the Wizards broadcasters called him, 75% of the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but you can expect 48 minutes from them, probably a 28-20 split, but at 3,700 for AP and 48 for Mahinmi, those are both reasonable if you're going to get solid playing time from those guys.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, Do you play them in the same lineup? Like, are you allowing that?
No, I don't think that they're that cheap. It's not like, they're 3K and 3,700 or something like that.
Gary Payton's $5,800.
I'm actually really happy about that because I didn't want to have to guess at what to do with him today.
Yeah, I mean that game was really the most. I know you said he looked like the best player out there, and he did, but 6 steals, 11 boards. I mean, doing anything close to that again is not only improbable, but close to impossible.
I mean that was easily a career game for him. But like, let's say he was 3,600.
Oh, he'd be in every lineup.
Right. It would be really easy to give him minutes over Schofield and Bonga, but you'd still be running the risk that he just plays like the backup point or something.
At $300 less than Ish Smith, I don't see myself going there. But the big question I have for you really is, when you talk about Ish Smith and you look at Gary Payton, do you think that, let's assume McRae doesn't start, or I'm sorry, that he isn't active, because that'll throw a wrench into it even more. But assuming that's the case, I believe Justin Robinson was the direct backup for Ish Smith anyway, at least up until the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and also to go back to Payton, he's only 4K on FanDuel, so
yeah,
he is in play there. I don't think he plays 34 minutes, but even if you were to give Gary Payton like 20 or 22 minutes, he's going to pop up a little bit. So certainly someone to consider on FanDuel. Okay. But yeah, to your point, Robinson was more of the backup for Ish in the first half. And then in the second half, Payton subbed in for Ish. Or no, sorry. Robinson subbed in for Ish, but then Ish just never came back, and Payton played the rest of the game.
Right. Ish never came back. Robinson came out, and then it closed with Matthews, Payton, Troy Brown, Mahinmi, and Beal. That's a hell of a lineup.
Right. If McRae is out, I think that the closing lineup would be Ish. Most likely, the closing lineup would be Ish, Beal, Brown. Ish, Beal, Ish, Payton, Beal, Brown, Mahinmi.
Yeah, probably. And something that's a little bit telling here: Wizards were up by 17, right? And the Knicks started to make a push. Now, if you look, Brooks actually brought Ish back in for the final minute and 20 seconds. So this may have been a big lead type thing where, Matthews or whoever it was out there doesn't get those same minutes, because in my opinion, the fact that Ish did come back for the final minute and a half is somewhat telling.
Yeah, I mean, you would expect him to play, especially because it's not like the Wizards only had one kind of random guy out there in Payton. Like, they had Payton and Matthews in there. Matthews has been basically the backup to Bradley Beal over the last week or so. So he's someone that I definitely wouldn't expect to be playing big minutes on most nights, and I certainly wouldn't expect to be in closing lineups.
Okay. What about the Pistons side of this one? With mostly we know what we're getting here. Blake probable. Christian Wood doesn't seem like a big deal, but he's going to play. He'll at least be active. Luke Kennard is out. Bruce Brown's questionable, though, and that's kind of a big deal, because then you get more minutes from someone like Mikhailuk, who's just bad. I don't. Who was it? Didn't Frazier start last game?
Yeah, Frazier started and played like 22 minutes.
Yeah, so you have that. So like the Bruce Brown thing definitely is something we got to keep an eye on. But how about Drummond coming off the bench to start that game?
That was really weird. Did we ever get a reason for that?
I did not see anything. And then he started the second half.
Yeah, it was almost like it was a discipline thing, like we saw with Covington the other day.
Yeah. That's the only thing I could think of. But maybe not, though, because he missed shoot around. He wasn't at shoot around that day.
Oh, I don't think I even knew that.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Hold on. Look at this. Oh, no. Here's what it was. It looks like he missed shoot around. Not that he was injured or sick, because it says it looks like a minor disciplinary measure by Dwayne Casey. So it looks like you're probably right.
Yeah, so, that whole thing is weird. But yeah, I assume he's back in the starting lineup today.
I can't imagine any reason he wouldn't be.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously a really, really good spot for Detroit. And to your point, Bruce Brown makes a big difference because while with Rose in and Kennard out, you're still not expecting huge minutes from Brown, and you're not expecting huge production since Rose is going to play his 26 to 28 minutes. But it's if you're going to get 22 minutes from Tim Frazier at 3,500 on DraftKings, that's a pretty decent value in this matchup. So if Brown's out, I think you get value there from Frazier. I think Rose is a decent option regardless. You're probably getting around 26 minutes, but in a really favorable matchup. Really good matchup for Drummond, good matchup for Griffin, who he's obviously struggled this year, but I feel like people kind of overstated also. Like just from talking about him in chat sometimes, people look at it, they're like, oh, Griffin's not playing well. He's projected too high. I'm going to take him out or whatever. He's still averaging like a fantasy point per minute. He's just not getting 1.2 points per minute like he used to. So I feel like people kind of have a tendency to do that when they notice someone's kind of not performing up to expectations, is to be like, oh, their projection's wrong. But if the projection has him at around a point per minute, or in this matchup a little bit higher, that's where he should be. And at his price tag, that still looks pretty reasonable.
I mean, last season we were seeing Blake Griffin up around 9,000 at times.
Right.
That's right. Absurd. But
I think his salary now reflects how he is playing this year.
100%. Absolutely. You're not paying a premium for him. It's not like, when people are saying like, oh, he's been terrible, I'm taking him out of my player pool, like you were just saying, if he's been terrible and his price tag mirrors his production or lack thereof, why not have at least some interest in getting there? To me, it only makes sense that in this matchup, you have to have some interest in Blake. The big thing for me, he's averaging 12.7 rebound chances per game. Last year, he averaged that. This year, he's at like 8.5. Now, his minutes are also down from the 35 minutes per game he averaged a season ago. But there's no question that the rebounding has been a bit of an issue. His rebound chance percentage last year, though, was 59.3%. This year, it's 53.5%. Contested rebound rates right around the same. So, like, if you got him back to playing 35 minutes, then you're probably going to get good numbers. But that's one of the big things here is Blake Griffin, from a minute standpoint, literally averaged 35 minutes per game last season.
Right. And I think that's a really good point, too. Like, I'm not saying that Griffin is a great play at his salary. It's just that as long as the projections that you're using aren't, using Blake Griffin numbers from like 3 years ago as their primary, primary reference point, he should be being projected to exceed 1 fantasy point per minute in this spot. You should have him at about 30 minutes. It should give you a decent play that, isn't a core play, but isn't someone that you're just not getting to.
Right. Okay. 6,800 on DraftKings is just, ungodly cheap. On Yahoo, you've got Blake. I wouldn't say ungodly cheap. It's just very reasonable. How about this though? 21 on Yahoo.
That's really cheap.
That's insane. And if you compare it to other guys at $21 or in the same price range, like he's the same price as Jalen Brunson and Elfrid Payton, Rashawn Holmes, DeAndre Jordan. So if you're playing on Yahoo today, Blake Griffin stands out. What are you doing with the rest of Detroit?
I think Drummond's still a really good play. Going up against a really depleted Washington front court should be plenty of rebounding opportunities for him. Obviously, the usage comes down a little bit with Blake in. The assist numbers come down a little bit, but still a really, really, really good spot for Andre Drummond.
Okay. Yeah, I like Drummond here. There's no reason to assume that he's not going to, get the exact same type of opportunity and run that you would normally expect from him. And
sorry.
No, I was just going to say the Pistons are 6-point favorites, but neither team is good. I get maybe they run away with it, but that's certainly not a concern.
Right. And if Brown is out, you probably get about 30 minutes of Langston Galloway running around doing not a whole lot of anything.
Yeah. Being invisible, but he's there nonetheless. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like McKayluke's the same though. His per minute production's really bad.
Yeah, McKayluke's even worse than Galloway's for DFS.
For sure. Yeah. And I guess, well, Tim Frazier started last game alongside Michaela. It was Kennard and Bruce Brown out, right?
Right.
Was Blake in or out?
Blake was in.
Blake was in. So we could be looking at the same situation as last game.
Right. In which case, again, like Frazier, he's actually been reasonably productive when he's on the floor. It's just a matter of him getting minutes. But if he's basically going to split the point guard minutes with Derrick Rose, 22, 26, or somewhere around there for the season, Frazier's average 0.85 DraftKings points per minute. He has been really, really good at picking up assists. It's a good matchup. It's a pretty solid value if he starts again.
0.96.
Oh, I must have a bad data source.
Well, 11 fantasy points, 11.4 minutes per game. So
yeah,
you said Frazier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that wouldn't be the craziest idea. Let's talk about Brooklyn and New York. Obviously, that Washington and Detroit game is one that we needed to spend a lot of time on. It's going to be pivotal in how this slate breaks down. A couple games we still don't have spreads on yet. This one we do. Nets 7.5 point favorites, 225 over under. So they're big favorites at home against the Knicks. Kyrie Irving is still out. Karis LeVert is still out, and it's a Knicks squad that I'd say under new coaching has looked a little bit better, and we've seen them at least playing somewhat more competitive basketball. But we'll start with the Brooklyn side. Battle of New York. Anybody that you really like here now that we're starting to see the prices are coming in and out, up and down on some of these guys. Like Jared Allen's price has been fluctuating over the past however many weeks, and when he gets the minutes, he's very productive. Taurean Prince continues to play around 30 minutes per game. I do think that having Wilson Chandler in the mix is going to keep him from getting those 35-minute games, though, and that's pretty impactful in my opinion. And then just your usual suspects, Garrett Temple and Joe Harris, and Spencer Dinwiddie, whose prices come up pretty significantly over the past week.
Yeah, I think the pricing on the Nets isn't really the most appealing. Dinwiddie's someone that I've liked a lot since Irving's been out, and I think he's still okay against a really bad Knicks defense, but the price tag has come up. He's generally playing around 33, 34 minutes in competitive games, and so a little bit more expensive than I would like. Jared Allen's price has come up. I agree with you on Taurean Prince, where he's capable of playing well. He's a volatile player, which is nice in tournaments, but Chandler being back does give them pretty competent backup behind him that makes me think he plays around 30 minutes more often than not. I think Allen probably is the one that I like the most, just because there's so much flexibility in his playing time in addition to his production. It's not the kind of guy that you're going to trust in cash games, but he should come in relatively low owned, just because medium projections on him don't really tell the full story. And I always like getting into guys like that in tournaments.
Dinwiddie's 8,100 on FanDuel, which is pretty appealing.
Yeah, that's a great price point.
So 87 on DraftKings to me is a little bit prohibitive. On Yahoo, he's 39, but yeah, 81 on FanDuel is really appealing. The Knicks side of the ball, I think we're beginning, hopefully, to see minutes balance themselves out a little bit more. Elfrid Payton has played 27 and 30 over his last two, got the nod in the starting lineup. RJ Barrett, his minutes are, I don't know what to make of them. I think in competitive games, you would hope that he keeps playing around 33. And then Julius Randle, he's probably been the most consistent in close games, at least. And his price, I'd say, is pretty reasonable. I don't know how much of a priority we're looking at some of these guys, but number one, we have to see what Marcus Morris, what that whole senior thing really throws me off. But we got to see what his situation is. He's coming into this game questionable with that sore Achilles. That could make a difference, because last couple of games, Kevin Knox, who I had some of him on the 23rd. He gets off. He's got like 13 fantasy points in the first 7 minutes. And I'm like, okay, this is good. This is good. I didn't need anything crazy from you, Kevin. Just be decent, And then he finishes with 14.75 in 27 minutes.
Yeah, he played exactly like Kevin Knox.
Not in the first quarter. Just
three
quarters after that.
Yeah, I only had he was like 12% owned on DraftKings. I think I had like 3%. And so in that first quarter, I was just like, oh no, it's gonna be one of those days.
Yeah, and I was
And
like, oh, nice. It's finally going to be one of those days.
right. But yeah, so I mean, Morris makes a difference too, because not only do you get more playing time for Kevin Knox, but it gives more usage to guys like RJ Barrett and Julius Randle. But either way, I think Randle's price point is really appealing. But Brooklyn's not like a great matchup. They've been a pretty good defensive team over the last month. They've been around the middle of the pack in pace. So it's not the same Brooklyn team that we kind of think of as, really fast pace, really bad defensively, but still a really, really good price point on Randle, where it seems like the salary is just reflecting the volatility in the minutes for New York, as opposed to where he normally plays in competitive games. Played 37 against Washington. That was with Taj Gibson out. Even with Gibson back, I would expect around 34 minutes from Randle, and he is a good play, I think, with or without Morris. So he really stands out to me. He's the top guy for me from the Knicks.
Me too. I like Randle quite a bit. What are your thoughts on Peyton, though? Like, Peyton, if you remember last year, not that you wouldn't remember, but when Peyton was getting opportunities, this guy was a legitimate triple-double threat. Now, he was also playing on a team that had, significantly better players, and I don't want to overlook or downplay that aspect of it. But in all seriousness, you look at the last 2 games where he's played 27 and 30 minutes. He has 10 and 12 assists, 5 and 7 rebounds. He hasn't been able to score, but even a bad scorer, a bad shooter like Elfrid Payton should be able to give you more than 5 or 6 points per game. So let me put it to you this way, Adam. I don't think $5,300 on DraftKings is all that insane. I don't think $5,400 on FanDuel is all that insane. And I think $20 on Yahoo is a little much when you look at some of the guys that are also priced down. But I'm not totally opposed to a low 5K price tag for Peyton. I don't love the matchup, as you mentioned, but he is the type of guy that could go out there and give you 10, 10, and 11.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite plays from New York. I would say Randle, Peyton, and Robinson, even assuming Robinson goes back to the bench, are the 3 guys that look the best to me from the Knicks. But yeah, I mean, Peyton in a competitive game should play around 30 minutes. Obviously, that's a big assumption with the Knicks, but 28 to 30 minutes for Peyton. He's averaged over a fantasy point per minute this season. He's played well from like a basketball standpoint,
yeah.
Not turning the ball over, picking up a bunch of assists. And he's obviously the best fantasy producer out of the Knicks point guards. So it's nice that he's getting the minutes now. I think that there's no real reason to doubt his playing time outside of the blowout risk that comes with every single game the Knicks play.
Right. And then with Mitchell Robinson, you have to worry about the foul trouble, which has been, I mean, I've always said it. I don't like to predict foul trouble, but my God, when it comes to Mitchell Robinson, it's just like baked into his game every single day.
Right. I think you and I have talked about it before. There's a difference between predicting blowouts and predicting foul trouble when you're looking at a specific game and saying, I don't know how this game stays.
Exactly.
I don't know how he stays out of foul trouble. It's totally different if you look at like the last month of games for a team or for a player, and you say like, oh, these, like Giannis is averaging 30 minutes per game because the Bucks blow out every team. Robinson is averaging X minutes per game because he fouls every game. Like that's different than predicting foul trouble.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's you have to distinguish that for sure. Do you want to talk about anything else from the Knicks?
I do not.
OKC and Memphis. Here's an exciting one. Danilo Gallinari, he's probable here. In terms of injuries to the rest of this game, there's really nothing. Like he's the only one that at this point has any question mark, and it looks like he's going to play anyway. So nothing to get really into the weeds with here. The Thunder are 6.5 point favorites, 224 over under, and it's really just an Oklahoma City team that, from a fantasy standpoint, has underwhelmed greatly. Gilgeous-Alexander has definitely looked better lately. Is this sustainable? You would think with the minutes and with the roster around him that it is, but I really don't know. Dennis Schroeder continuing to get good minutes off the bench. He's played well. You look at the last 3 games for both of those guys, and they've been very productive. Throw Chris Paul into the mix. Once in a while, he'll give you a solid effort, but it's just a hard team to predict when it comes to this 3-point guard this 3-guard rotation in OKC.
Yeah, but pretty appealing pricing on
they are.
7,200 on DraftKings for Paul, 6,700 for Gilgeous-Alexander. I think are both pretty decent price points, especially for Gilgeous-Alexander, who he kind of the problem with him is that he's really scoring dependent, and we've talked about it
Big
all
time.
year. He plays a lot of minutes, he gets up a lot of shots, but if he's not having a good scoring game, you run the risk of him really disappointing for his salary. But the flip side of that is the salary is basically geared toward his median projection, and because he has so many opportunities to score, you get a pretty wide range of outcomes from him where he has a higher usage rate than a lot of guys that are going to be priced around him. He's more involved offensively than a lot of guys that are going to be priced around him. And so that gives you a bit higher ceiling than a lot of those guys. It's also a good matchup against Memphis, who plays at a reasonably fast pace. They're not very good defensively. So yeah, I think that, there's the obvious risk that always comes with him, but Gilgeous-Alexander looks pretty good.
Yeah, Memphis playing at a top 5 pace over the last month with the 24th ranked defense, 113 defensive rating, averaging 103 possessions per 48. So it is a good matchup for sure. It's difficult to know which one of them is going to give you the solid game, but simply put, if you're giving me 36 minutes in a close game from Gilgeous-Alexander, it's worth taking the risk. The big thing though, and you pointed it out, he's totally scoring dependent. Like, you look at his last 2 games, he was in the 40s in fantasy points, but he scored 32 points in both. He will need to score. Now, he'll get the opportunities. He's going to shoot. He's a high usage player. He's going to get the ball up, but you need him to score. And I think against Memphis, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. The rest of OKC, though, it starts to get a little dicey. Steven Adams has played 30 minutes in 3 of his last 6 games, which is encouraging. He's played less than 28 minutes only once over his last 10 games, so that's cool. And we're starting to see that ceiling from Adams that you and I had talked about earlier this season, but just didn't materialize. His price has also come up a little bit, though. But I want to know your thoughts on him. Like, if you're projecting Adams for 30 minutes, what type of interest would you have in him with the way he's played?
Yeah, I think he looks like a pretty decent value now that the minutes are up a little bit. Played 31 and a half minutes last game. So it's nice to it's nice to have a little bit of room like beyond 30, because I don't really want to project him for 30 if you were like, sometimes hitting 30, but usually playing 28. But getting him a little bit beyond that is nice. And, the rebounding numbers are strong. It's just been a matter of playing time. So I think he does look like a pretty good option.
Okay. I hear you. I kind of like him. That's it for me on OKC, though. Anything else for you here?
Gallo's price looks pretty reasonable, too. He's 6,600 on DraftKings. Should play around 32 minutes.
Yeah.
Just a good matchup.
It is a good matchup. His range of outcomes is like pretty condensed, or it's not big. Like, what do you like, 25 to 40 from Gallo every night?
Yeah, that is true. He's also tends to be really low owned though, which is nice.
He does, and it is Memphis, so I'm not opposed to it. Usually, I'm not on OKC, but on a 6-game slate against Memphis, it's not the worst time to I won't say load up on Thunder players, but they're definitely more appealing than they normally are. What about Memphis for you? Ja Morant is the good thing is we're getting the 30 plus minutes per game from him. The bad thing is he's been just okay since returning from injury. I still think at 6,900 on most days I'd have interest in him. I don't know how much I have today though against OKC, and I don't know if I'm getting more than 30 minutes. Like, is his ceiling from a minute standpoint, is it there? It's tough to say. He played 33 minutes against OKC a couple games ago, so that's good to see. But and he is sub 7K on DraftKings. But compared to the rest of the players or the player pool, where does a guy like Morant fall for you?
He doesn't really stand out. I think that in competitive games you can get 32 to 33 minutes from him, which is nice. I think at some point you see him start to produce at the clip that he was earlier this year, but it is kind of concerning that the usage rate is down since coming back from injury. Obviously, you have Memphis at full strength right now, so he's competing with Jaren Jackson, he's competing with Valanciunas. You have Dylan Brooks, who isn't exactly a low usage guy either on the floor. So I think Morant is an okay option, but he's more of the guy that I would get a little bit of exposure to in tournaments just to differentiate some lineups than a guy that I'm really building my night around, because I think that there are a lot of quality options on this slate, and he's got a pretty unappealing matchup going at OKC.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. Really, most of Memphis doesn't stand out to me. Is there anything from the Grizzlies that you do like?
I feel like Valanciunas deserves a mention anytime he's $6,100 just
Yeah.
because he's capable of going out there and scoring so many points. Just another really, really volatile player that his median projection doesn't look very good, but the range of outcomes is there. The minutes have been down, but like last game he played between 24 and 25 minutes. It was a game that they got blown out by the Spurs. I think that in a competitive game you can get 26, 27 minutes. So if he were to get a lot of ownership, I wouldn't want to be there because I think the range of outcomes is so wide and because I think he's a little bit overpriced for his median projection. But if nobody's going to get there, I think that he certainly has the type of ceiling that you want.
And he is still a 1.30 DraftKings point per minute guy on the year. So
right, and that's a good point too because not only is there a lot of volatility in his production as far as even in 24 minutes, he can go out there and score a ton of points. But there is also volatility in his playing time. Normally, he's going to get, around 26 minutes, but there are games where he gets more. And so you kind of have two different ways for him to do better than expected.
Yeah, I say this all the time. If you could tell me that Joe Val would get at least 28 minutes every day, it might only be 28, but he won't get any less than 28, barring foul trouble or whatever, or a massive blowout. At 6,100, I'd be playing a ton of him, and I would imagine the matchup would mean less pretty much every night. He is that productive most of the time that 28 plus minutes from Joval every night would make him a phenomenal play at 6,100.
Right.
San Antonio and Dallas. Luka Doncic he's questionable, but he went through a full practice on Tuesday, 2 days. I'd be surprised if he doesn't play today. So right now I'm projecting him in. We'll get your opinion on that in just a moment. But the Dallas Mavericks coming into this game are favored at home right now by 6.5 points. And you have a 226.5 over under. I guess that line looks like a Luka playing line. The Spurs aren't good, but they're not like dreadful. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that Luka plays today.
Yeah, so am I. He went through a full practice on Tuesday. Home game, national TV game. I assume he plays.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have interest in, I guess that's a bad way to phrase it. How much interest in Luka, assuming he's playing and isn't limited, would you have against the Spurs, who defensively and from a pace standpoint have actually been pretty appealing from a DFS standpoint this year?
Yeah, I mean, if he's not limited and you're expecting around 34 minutes, I think you have to have some interest just because, yeah, he's expensive, but there are plenty of underpriced guys today, especially if you get, if Bruce Brown is out, for example, and you can get to Frazier, or, if McRae's in for Washington, like there's value to be had for a 6-game slate. So I don't think it'll be that difficult to get to Luka. Obviously, a lot comes down to whether he's going to be limited because you don't want to be paying $12K for a guy that has some sort of restriction. But he's just been, absolutely amazing all season long. So if we get word that he's in and he's good to go, I'm not going to shy away from getting to Luka.
Okay. I haven't crunched any lineups yet, though. I don't know where he would come in for me. Right. But, yeah, if he's not limited, he's always in play. The rest of Dallas, this is where it gets a bit weird because, Porzingis with Luka out has played really well. He's seen his price tag increase. That's not going to be really beneficial today. Tim Hardaway's salary has come up a bit. Even if Doncic was out, Jalen Brunson's price has skyrocketed. So, outside of maybe Dwight Powell, pretty much, actually, no, even Dwight Powell, everyone has seen an increase in salary. If Luka returns, what it does for this Dallas team is makes almost all of them, takes almost all of them off the board for me, unless you're getting them at a reasonable price point, which doesn't seem like there is much of that.
Right. If Luka's back, it just means that basically this entire team's overpriced because they are now being priced in part for Luka not being on the floor.
For sure. Is there anyone you want to
talk about? If Luka's out, then by all means go right back to Porzingis.
Exactly. Is there anyone else you want to talk about for Dallas? I don't think there's
not
much.
Really. Yeah, it's pretty much just Luka and Porzingis, depending on Luka's status.
So DeJounte Murray played 28 minutes last game. Solid. They smoked the Memphis Grizzlies. And when you look at how that game broke down, DeJounte Murray was in the game and up until like 3 or 4 minutes left, 3.5 minutes, and then Pop emptied the bench. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that he was on pace to play 31 minutes there.
Yeah, he lost 3 minutes and 4 seconds to the blowout.
Which is kind of interesting. I mean, I had him projected at 28, hoping that he could get a little bit more. I still don't think one game where he was on pace to play 31 is indicative of what's going to happen every game going forward. We just haven't seen anything to suggest that's the case this season. But it's still a step in the right direction. It's still very encouraging because DeJounte Murray is a quality per minute guy. He's come back down to earth since the start of the season, totally understood. But he's still a +1 fantasy point per minute player. And his price, this is the big thing for me, his price hasn't really come up that much. He's $5,700 on DraftKings. He's $5,900 on FanDuel. On Yahoo, he's $23. So if you are projecting him for 30 minutes today, at that price, I would imagine you're going to get a decent amount.
Yeah, I think I'll end up projecting him for 28 minutes just because the thing that concerns me with his playing time is that you're still seeing him and Derek White split 48, and then you're seeing Bryn Forbes and Patty Mills split 48. If they were running Murray alongside White at all, it would be easier to give him a higher, median minute projection. But Derek White's not bad. He's going to get his minutes. And I think that, expecting it's tough to think that White plays, 18 or fewer minutes on a consistent basis. So I feel a lot better going like 28 minutes for Murray, knowing that there are going to be some games where he plays a little more, but there's also going to be some games where White plays really well and Murray gets a little bit less. But either way, I think the price point is reasonably appealing. It's not a great matchup against Dallas. They've been decent defensively. They don't play at a particularly fast pace, but Murray is certainly capable of beating that salary.
How are you approaching the rest of the Spurs? DeRozan, his price continues to plummet. Finally bounced back with a solid effort last game. LaMarcus Aldridge, priced exactly where he should be. He went off last time out. I think he scored 40 real points.
Yeah, he had 65 DraftKings points.
Yeah, it's just outrageous.
Yeah, it was just one of those games like we saw earlier this year where I think he shot, like 85% or something.
Right. Yeah, didn't he have one game where he shot like 14 of 16?
Yeah, it was a random game where he was really, really, really popular. I don't remember why, but it wasn't fun.
Trey Lyles played 25 minutes in this last game too. And he actually didn't get any of the blowout run, the 3.5 minutes of blowout run. So that's kind of interesting. Let's start with him. We already talked Murray, but let's start with Trey Lyles for a minute because he gets into this game as a starter, plays 25 minutes, loses 3.5 minutes in a blowout. What do you think of him at $3,600 on DraftKings and pretty much dirt cheap everywhere? He's $3,800 on FanDuel and minimum salary on Yahoo.
Yeah, that was really weird.
Very.
His minutes, it had been down. It also wouldn't be surprising to see a little bit different. Like, it wouldn't even be surprising if Aldridge started at the 4 today, I don't think. But if Lyles starts, like, I'm still not projecting 25 minutes. I'll probably go like 18 to 20.
Okay. What's interesting to me, though, is like that Memphis front court is not that big. Now you're going up against the front court with Dwight Powell and, a 19-foot Kristaps Porzingis. So I don't know. I don't know how to project him, but I think if you were to project 20 minutes for Lyles at 3,600 or minimum salary, there's a possibility that you still get some Trey Lyles. Maybe not.
No, I mean, in 150 lineups, you probably get some.
Okay.
It's not like a high exposure play, though.
I just don't know how to project his minutes is the problem.
Right. Like, he was splitting minutes with Rudy Gay, but Rudy Gay only played 20. So, I don't know. I don't think it would be surprising at all, though, if Pop went with Pirtle at the 5 and Aldridge at the 4 because of Dallas's size.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Do you want to talk about anything else from either side?
I think DeRozan's salary is too cheap for who he is. Like, obviously he has his flaws, but in competitive games, you're getting 33, 34 minutes. The usage comes down a little bit with Murray on the floor, but you're still talking about around 25% usage from him. I think he's actually my favorite play from the Spurs.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's really cheap at this point. You've got to have some interest. Let's get to two more here. Sacramento, Minnesota, Utah, Portland. That'll do it for us, and we'll close it out. But before we do, if you haven't signed up at awesemo.com yet, I'm going to tell you how to get 50% off your first week. It's very simple. Use the sign-up code NBA Strategy, all one word. When you pick out your subscription, you get a all-access Awesemo Plus Platinum. By using the sign-up code NBA Strategy, one word, you'll get 50% off your first week of subscription. So you go in there, use that sign-up code, get 50% off your first week. Right off the top, it's a phenomenal deal because you can get all of the content, the ownership projections, player projections, the top stack tool, the boom or bust tool, the lineup builder. The Fantasy Cruncher add-on is essential, but it is an add-on. I would definitely recommend checking that out as well. All of the premium articles that are the best you're going to find, and so much more, man. There's a lot over there at Awesemo behind the paywall, and you get a 50% off. Just use the sign-up code NBA Strategy. You get 50% off your first month of all access Awesemo Plus. Now, if you wanted to go, the discount route, you could always go with the weekly pass, the express pass for $3.95 a week. But in all seriousness, like the best move would just be get the all access, see what it is that we have to offer, and get 50% off of the top for your first week. Just use the sign-up code NBA Strategy. All those tools, by the way, developed and used by Awesemo himself, #1 ranked DFS player in the world, but you already knew that. Sacramento, Minnesota. Bogdanovich is questionable for Sacramento, but for Minnesota, two significant ones here. Karl Anthony Towns remains questionable. You had said, I think on Monday, like, hey, this guy very rarely misses games. What did he miss? Like 3 in his career prior to this?
I think he missed 5. He played 99% of his career games.
Okay, 99%. So now he hasn't played in 12 days, 13 days. That, at this point you have to consider maybe this is a little bit more than just a banged up knee. I think they said it's a knee sprain. But at this point, I don't know what to think of Karl Anthony Towns because, as you mentioned, he doesn't miss games. He's been missing games. Gorgie Jang's price point is coming up, so that's worth taking into consideration. And then Shabazz Napier, you would think that he's got a much better chance of playing because he was held out with an illness, and that was on Monday. Now it's Thursday. So he played 30 minutes and started in his last game. Let's start with him because I would think if one of them was more likely to play, just because if he's dealing with an illness, it would be Napier.
Yeah, Napier, as far as Towns goes, I'm just assuming he's out until I hear otherwise at this point.
Yeah, me too.
Because, like you said, he plays through injuries. And so him being out for this long, combined with the fact that the Timberwolves aren't playing for anything, I'm just assuming he's out until we hear that he's not. But for Napier, I'm with you. He missed the game with an illness. He was a late addition to that injury report. I assume he goes today, and if he does, he's probably the best value play on the slate. DraftKings dropped the ball with his pricing. He's 3,300. He actually went down from last game, and he's been in the starting lineup for 2 games. He was disappointing in 1 game against Denver, played really well in the other, played about, I think, 28 minutes. But he's always been a pretty productive fantasy player when he's on the floor. He's not one of these guys that he's not a Langston Galloway type that just goes out there and you're just praying that the ball bounces to him a couple times or he gets some steals. Like, he actually produces. So I think he's the risk obviously is that, it's a long-term illness or something, but and it would be hard to late swap because he's only 3,300, but assuming he's in, he's clearly a top value.
He's the best value on the slate if he plays and starts again.
Yep.
Right? I mean,
yeah, in terms of like really cheap guys, yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm sorry, like punt. Sorry, best punt available would be Napier. He's just ridiculously cheap. And if Towns is out, that will help him. I mean, he got up 15 shots last time he played. It's not going to affect him as much as it would affect like an Andrew Wiggins, but it's still going to affect Shabazz Napier. Taking a near 30% usage player out of the offense out of the lineup is only going to benefit everybody else, including Shabazz Napier. So well worth keeping an eye on that. It's a 10 p.m. start, which sucks. It's also funny that, Jarrett Culver was the pivot for that one last game. And how'd that work out for us?
Yeah, he played like 14 minutes. I was actually really glad because I had like 40% Napier and I started to just global swap him, but I went ahead and late swapped and didn't get 40% Culver because that would have been miserable.
That would have been horrible. You did
yeah, I mean you can do the same thing today. The problem is just that it's Jarrett Culver. You do have a $3,400 Okogie that you could swap at least some of those Napier lineups to.
I think I'd probably rather do that at this point.
Yeah, he at least plays minutes.
Right.
Well, no, he played 15 that game, so I don't know. Ryan Saunders has just run some really, really brutal rotations.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. Hopefully, you know what? Hopefully we get some shoot-around news on Napier. Make things a little bit easier.
Ryan Saunders played 13 players against Golden State on the 23rd.
Yeah, it's...
With Napier out and with Towns out.
How do you even get 13 players into it and onto the floor with those guys sidelined?
Yeah, I don't know, but like Jordan Bell played the fewest minutes at 4, but every other player played at least 12 minutes.
Kalen Martin played 16 minutes to end the game.
Right. And part of this is because of the game flow. The Warriors were up by 24 points in the third. You got the bench in, and then the bench went on a run. So Keelan Martin stayed in, Jordan McLaughlin stayed in, Trevion Graham stayed in, and then they put in Jang and Wiggins to try and actually compete. That the game flow was really weird, but the point is just that Ryan Saunders has been very quick to go to very, very, very deep parts of his bench all season long.
Dude, Kalen Martin, Jordan McLaughlin, and Trevion Graham all played at least 15 minutes to close out the game.
And yeah, they all played the entire fourth quarter.
It's game flow for sure, but that's a bit concerning when Jalen Noel plays 16 minutes and Vonleh gets in for 16. Those are a lot of names that you'll probably never hear again, but it's really hard to say. So yeah, you're right. That's an issue. But if Napier plays, I have no doubt that he's going to get the opportunity. Wiggins is for sure going to keep getting those minutes. I think Jang should if Towns is out, will continue to get run. I do want to ask you with Gorgui Dieng, what price tag is too much for you? He's $5,700 on DraftKings now. On FanDuel, he's coming in at $4,900, which in my opinion is still very ridiculous. And then over on Yahoo, he's $15,000.
Yeah, I think the pricing is still fine. I think that the Yahoo and FanDuel pricing are the most appealing, obviously. But for the season, he's still averaged about 1.15 DraftKings points per minute. I think that you get around 30 minutes if Towns is out. It's not a particularly appealing spot in that Sacramento's a really slow team, though they should play a little bit faster now that De'Aaron Fox is back. But they've also allowed the 5th fewest rebounds per game to opponents. So it's not the best spot for Jang, but I still think that on FanDuel and Yahoo, he's still fine.
You like the over or under at 222 on this one?
Yeah, that's a little higher than I would have thought.
I thought so too. There wasn't a line earlier. I had it at 219. So
yeah, Minnesota plays reasonably fast, and I expect Sacramento to be more of like a middle of the pack pace team going forward.
All right, you ready to talk about? We got one more to go, but before we do, we got to talk about Luke Walton and what we saw with him. We had a couple people in chat mentioning, and look, they accurate. This was not like fake news in our chat. They were talking about how Luke Walton wanted to play Bagley solely at the exclusively at the 5. Well, what did we get, Adam? Well, I'll tell you. We got a starting lineup last game of De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, Marvin Bagley, and Richaun Holmes. Well, a couple of things. First of all, Holmes was in foul trouble 2.5 minutes into the game. So there's that. And then he caught his 3rd foul 5 minutes into the second quarter. So his minutes were limited there. He still managed to get to 30 because he played huge minutes in the second half. Marvin Bagley in the second half never returned for the fourth quarter. So this is an interesting one to break down, to say the least. Bjelica played the entire fourth quarter. He played a little bit alongside Bagley in the third, and then Bagley never returned. So he got 23 minutes. In the first half, he played, I think, was it like 13 minutes or so? And I'm sorry, more than that, right?
Yeah, he played like 15.
Yeah, 15 minutes. And then in the third quarter, comes in, he plays a 3-minute stint. He plays 5 minutes to close out the quarter, never returns. It was closed out with Corey Joseph, Trevor Ariza, Bjelica, De'Aaron Fox, and Rashawn Holmes. That was your closing. Or sorry, Joseph came out with a few minutes left. Barnes got the final 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was another game flow thing. Houston was killing them. The second unit got hot with Fox. They just ran with it. Like, I was watching the game because I'd swapped onto a lot of Bagley, and it was really obvious what was going to happen. So, like, I'm not concerned about his minutes. I haven't projected for 30 here. They've said that he's starting already. But yeah, it is pretty crazy. I guess like Vlade Divac must have kidnapped Luke Walton and then forced him to start him or something, because he literally says in a quote, Bagley can play the 4, but we need him to play the 5 only because he needs to learn how to play the 5. And also he's going to start at the 4. Like, it's just so weird. And Luke Walton did this same stuff when he was with the Lakers. So it's not really that surprising. But the main takeaway is that I think Bagley's one of the best values on the slate. He's 5,300 on DraftKings. I have him in for 30 minutes. Obviously, minutes at the 4 are a bit less productive than minutes at the 5, but he should still get about half of his minutes without Holmes on the floor. It also makes Holmes a little bit better option. He's more expensive than Bagley, but when you're not splitting 48 minutes between Holmes and Bagley, it means that Holmes can play 30, 32 minutes. Bagley can play around 30 minutes, and they both can be pretty decent options. But Bagley is the preferred option for me by a lot.
Okay. And yeah, we saw Bagley play alongside Bjelica. We saw Bagley play alongside Holmes. I mean, at this rate, if you look at the rotations, Bjelica came in for Holmes, and then Holmes came back in for Bagley, and then Bagley came in for Holmes, and Bjelica came in for, I guess it was it Harrison Barnes? I don't even know. Like, it's kind of all over the place. But I agree with you. If you're projecting Bagley for even 28 minutes at that price point, it's really hard not to like him. So yeah, I'm with you there. What about the rest of Sacramento? This is kind of the big question. Is De'Aaron Fox, now that he's playing huge minutes again, in play for you? For me personally, I think $7K on DraftKings is way too cheap, knowing how well he'd been playing. He's only $6,900 on FanDuel, $28 on Yahoo. This is a very good price against a beat-up Minnesota backcourt, if Napier's, it doesn't really matter, honestly. A fast-paced defense or a team with a bad defense. I like Fox quite a bit here.
Yeah, I said that I thought Bagley was like the best value on DraftKings at 5,300. I think Fox is right behind him at 7K.
Absolutely.
And obviously using value differently than we were talking about Napier. Like, not talking about cheap plays, just saying like one of the most underpriced players. You know, you got 36 minutes from Fox in that last game, so clearly he's not on any sort of minutes restriction anymore after playing around 30 in his first few games back. Even if you project like 34 minutes here, he's averaged about 1.16 DraftKings points per minute this year. It's a favorable matchup. He's a really good player. He's a high usage guy. He picks up a ton of assists. I think Fox is absolutely a poor guy for me.
Yeah, me too. Him and Bagley are really good plays today. And, you know, you talk about how slow the Sacramento Kings play. Well, the Minnesota Timberwolves are a top 10 pace team. Over the last month, their defensive rating is 4th worst in the entire league. So great fantasy matchup for Sacramento. Do you have interest in anyone else for the Kings?
Hield's fine too. Like, the whole Kings team on DraftKings is underpriced. Bogdanovich is questionable. Like, if Bogdanovich is out and you're going to get 26 minutes from Corey Joseph at 3,400, that's another uninspiring, but cheap value guy that you can go to. But Buddy Hield only played 27 minutes last game. He was also a victim of the way that game went. I would expect around 33, 34 minutes from Hield in most games. He loses some usage with Fox, but his per minute production doesn't really change all that much. And that's something that when Fox first got hurt, we saw people just like flocking the roster Buddy Hield because the usage goes up a little bit, but he's not really a guy that creates a whole lot on his own. So his efficiency goes down. His per minute production doesn't really change. too much with or without Fox. So with his salary being down now, with people probably not looking to him quite as much since Fox is back, I think that's another guy that you can get to, though I do clearly have him behind Fox and Bagley.
Yeah, and the interesting thing too about Fox, just to close out this game, is it's not just one site where he's cheap. Like he's cheap everywhere.
Yeah,
And
none of the sites.
So is Bagley.
None of the sites were proactive about knowing that Fox was going to get back to 35 or 36 minutes. It was like, oh, he's playing 30. He should be priced here.
But that's just dumb. There's no reason. Yeah. Like why would you expect a guy that was playing that many minutes to not play 35 after he's been back for a few games? Like, would you expect him to keep coming off the bench or something? You're right. They just was no foresight there. It was kind of like, all right, well, if he starts playing those minutes, then we'll change it. But for now, I mean, look, it's fine with me. I do want to see, do we have ownership? It'll be very interesting to see where we're getting Bagley and Fox right now. Let's see here. It's making me log in. It's making me log in.
I will have it in a second. We do not have it.
We don't have ownership yet? Okay.
No.
Well, you and I will be back for the deeper dive, and we'll have it then. I'm writing the deep dive. You can check. You can find that at awesomeo.com. It's a premium article. Adam and I switch off each day. Put a lot of time into this. It'll be a fun one today with a lot of the plays we've already discussed, likely being in there, but with a lot more analysis, far more in-depth, comprehensive stuff mixed in there along the way. Is that it for Sacramento?
Yeah, just play a lot of Kings, especially Bagley and Fox.
Actually, let me just ask you one more thing. Is Holmes in play if we're going to see him get another 30 minutes?
Yeah, I think he's a good play. It's just that he's not the same per minute player that Bagley or Fox are, or even Heald. Holmes has been a better real life player than fantasy player, but still he is pretty cheap, and Bagley playing the 4 does open up more minutes for Holmes. So I think Holmes is a perfectly fine play. I just have him behind Bagley, Fox, Heald from the Kings.
I'm with you on that. We'll close it out with Utah and Portland. Remember, 11 o'clock, you got the NFL Strategy Show coming up. Ben Rossa, Sal Vetri. It's going to be a fun one, probably a long one, but it's certainly going to be worth watching. Stay tuned for that. YouTube.com/Awesomeo. Or it's on the homepage of awesomeo.com as well. Utah Jazz 5.5-point favorites, 219 total here. Mike Conley's out. Jordan Clarkson. I mentioned that, Cleveland's showcasing this guy. Josh said, "You're a dummy." He didn't say that. He just said, "Why would you showcase Clarkson?" And to some extent, you're kind of right. It's not like they got a bounty for him by any means, but Clarkson's a pretty good bench scorer. I'll be very, very intrigued to see how he's used. I want to start with this and just get your opinion on him, because I have no idea what his minutes are going to look like. He is expected to play, but he's $4,100. Dante Exum is gone, who wasn't being used anyway. 2 future second-round picks. That's neither here nor there. But here's the thing. Mike Conley's out. Emmanuel Mudiay was getting no run and then begun to pick up a little bit of momentum with Mike Conley out for the second time. Do you think Jingles starts seeing a few less minutes, because he was playing huge minutes? I'm honestly thinking that Ingles goes back to maybe 30, potentially. This is just a guess. Maybe 33, 32 instead of 37. Clarkson gets some backup 2 minutes and some backup point guard minutes, but I don't know how that affects Mudiay. I guess simply put, I don't see why you would bring in a pure shooter and pretty much instant offense off the bench if you don't plan on using him on a Utah team that struggled for offense.
Right, and here's the thing. They also waived Jeff Green.
Right, that's a big one. Yeah, so they can move Jingles up a position.
Right, well, and so basically you had been having Niang playing off the bench and Green playing off the bench, so some of Royce O'Neal's minutes were coming at the 3, and Royce O'Neal's playing 34 to 36 minutes a game.
Right.
Now if you have O'Neal playing more minutes at the 4, it just opens up a bunch of minutes where you don't have to take minutes away from Ingles or Bogdanovich. You can take some minutes away from Mudiay potentially. But I mean, Jeff Green was playing 16 to 18 minutes a night. So if you just give those to Clarkson and then assume Clarkson takes some of Mudier's minutes, I think that, expecting 22 to 24 minutes from Clarkson is very reasonable. And with this bench unit, I'll be interested to see how the rotation goes. Do they keep playing Donovan Mitchell with the bench unit, or does Donovan Mitchell play more minutes with the starters now and you let Clarkson kind of lead the bench? Because if Clarkson is getting the bulk of his minutes alongside Royce O'Neal, Ingles, Niang, and Davis, the guy's going to shoot. The guy's going to have like a 30+% usage rate. If he's playing a lot of his minutes alongside Mitchell, then he's still going to get his, but it's not going to be quite as appealing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird spot because I don't know what type of opportunity he's going to get, but you mentioned waiving Jeff Green. To put it simply, there are going to be minutes available for sure.
Right. You don't have to redo the whole rotation to get Clarkson in there to find his minutes, which is nice.
And I think we probably see it a bit differently, just in that I do think someone like Ingles will go from that 37 to 39, 38 minutes, that maybe lose like 4 there, which isn't a lot, but I am going to be factoring that in a little bit. I don't know if Quinn Snyder really wants to be running him for almost 40 minutes a game right now. And I think that's
so to be fair, I wasn't thinking of Ingles playing like 38 minutes. I was still thinking like 34.
Right. Well, I'm saying though, he has been like his minutes have been insane recently in a competitive game. So then we're saying the same thing. It'll be interesting to see. Do you think anybody like, because we'll get to Gobert and Mitchell in just a moment, but any type of these like peripheral options have appeal today?
I'm definitely interested in Clarkson.
So am I.
Yeah. Beyond that, 6,200 for Ingles is a little higher than I would like. 67, like it's not a bad matchup against Portland, so I don't mind any of these guys. I don't think I would say that they're priorities.
Okay. What about Rudy Gobert going up against Portland today and facing Hassan Whiteside, who's just been a stud? Not defensively though.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty decent spot for Gobert. The salary's gotten a bit expensive. He's up to 8,900 on DraftKings, but he's only 8,300 on FanDuel, which is a great salary. So really, really like him on FanDuel. I think he's fine on DraftKings, but definitely a priority on FanDuel. On Yahoo, he is $36, which is perfectly fine.
Okay. Doing 8 crazy nights of giveaways at Awesemo_com on the Twitter. It's day 3, baby. Win a free 2020 Awesemo Plus MLB yearly package. Be proactive. That's a value of $320. All you got to do is guess which 2 teams score the least amount of points on tonight's NBA slate. So you got 12 teams. Which 2 teams score the least amount of points? Do a little bit of rudimentary analysis here, and you should be able to come up with some pretty solid answers. All you got to do is guess which 2 teams score the least amount of points, and retweet and like and reply and follow. So retweet it, like it, reply with your answer, and follow Awesemo_com, Awesemo Odds, and Awesemo NBA. I think you have to just follow one of them, but I guess follow all 3 just to be sure. The one random winner will be selected among the correct entries, or all incorrect entries if none are correct. Don't shame us like that. Someone's got to get this right. It can't be that tough.
The Knicks are playing, so there's a free square.
I was just going to ask you, who are the 2 lowest scoring teams tonight, Adam? We'll go with free square Knicks. Who's next?
I think that it gets interesting. Probably, I think I would
Memphis.
take.
I think.
Yes, I think I would take Memphis. Portland has the lowest team total, but I think it's Memphis. Okay.
So go ahead and do that. While you're at it, follow myself and Adam on Twitter. You won't regret it. At Laffy_D. It's right above me. LOUGHY_D. And Adam at Ship My Money DFS. We'll see you over there. And be sure to get in on that free 2020 Awesemo Plus MLB yearly pass, a value of $320. Anything else for Utah?
I don't think so. Just a lot of guys that grade out reasonably well. Nobody that I think is going to be one of my highest owned guys on the slate, though.
What are you thinking on the Portland side? Whiteside's price, it's kind of funny, keeps coming down.
Of course it does.
What? What'd you say?
No, I said, of course it does.
Yeah. I know this matchup is not appealing, but I do think it's at least worth pointing out that Hassan Whiteside keeps getting better and his price keeps getting lower.
Yeah, and it's not like he's not being owned either. It's a really good price point for Whiteside. It's obviously not the best matchup dealing with Gobert. Utah is in the middle of the pack in defensive rating over the last month. They haven't been particularly slow. They're 11th in pace over the last a little over a month. So it's not a terrible matchup for Portland. I think that Whiteside's a good play. It's just that there's enough risk here where if he's going to be like 40% owned or something, you can start to pivot to some other guys. But I think he's still a good option. He's averaging about 1.5 fantasy points per minute since Melo joined the team, which is kind of surprising since if you watch the games, you see plenty of rebounds going to Hassan Whiteside and Melo flying across the court to steal them. But still a really high rebound percentage for Whiteside. He's been playing really well, and the price tag is just clearly too inexpensive.
Okay. So, well, the thing about Whiteside too is you look at some of the production comes from pretty reliable places. You know what I mean? He's got a 20% usage rate, a 23% rebound rate, and he actually has a career high 7% assist rate. Nothing crazy, but also there was a time where if Whiteside had an assist in a month, it was crazy. And he has an 8% block rate. So I just love guys that produce in this fashion. Reliable time in and time out. Even if they're not having a great game, you can still get 16 and 17 with 4 blocks from him and not get crushed. I think he's perfectly fine at this price point still. 7,700 to me is still very, very reasonable. Now, what about the rest of Portland? Nobody's really priced up. I mean, CJ McCollum has been priced down for a little while now. This is one of the cheapest salaries we've seen him at all season. Damian Lillard, $8,500 on DraftKings. Any thoughts on this backcourt here? And Carmelo Anthony you can throw in as well.
Yeah, I have interest in Lillard and McCollum. One thing that is interesting to me, and it doesn't always mean anything. Like I try not to get too bogged down in play type data, but the Jazz have allowed the third most pick and roll points per game to opposing ball handlers. They're in the middle of the pack in efficiency. They rank in the 51st percentile in defensive efficiency, but the third most points per game. They've allowed the second most pick and roll possessions per game. Lillard is top 3 in the NBA in pick and roll possessions per game. It's a large part of his offense. He's one of the most efficient pick and roll ball handlers in the league. He ranks in, I believe it's the 93rd or 94th percentile in efficiency. So it was a really good matchup from a play type standpoint against the Pelicans as well. He disappointed, but it's another situation where it seems to set up nicely for the way that he plays.
All right. Is that all you got?
Yep.
Well, you and I will do it again tonight, huh?
Yeah, should be fun.
On the deeper dive, we'll have a lot more information too. It's kind of important stuff. I'll be back with Adam for the deeper dive today, 5 p.m. Eastern, live before lock. Eddie Fear, Chris Spags. You got the early bird coming up tonight. Drop late tonight. You can listen in the morning. That's Dan Strafford and myself. We'll break down everything for tomorrow's slate, give you a fundamental or a foundational look. But coming up next is the NFL Strategy Show. Ben Rasa, Sal Vetri. Stay tuned for that. Do not go anywhere. Well, go get some coffee, go do something. I don't know, whatever you got. Maybe you got to go get some work done. You got 15 minutes almost. So they'll be taking you up to whatever time. It's going to be a long one, but well worth it. And hey, if you enjoy the show, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video. We appreciate all of you for hanging out. It helps us, though. It supports us a ton. It's the most simple way you can support us at awesomemode.com. Just hit us with a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you always know when new content is going to drop next. All right. That'll do it for us. Adam Sayer, myself, Dave Lockram. We'll see you back here tonight on the Deeper Dive. Stay tuned. NFL Strategy Show, 11 a.m. Eastern sharp. This has been the Strategy Show presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Talk to you soon.